Our guest today is Mike Lynd, CEO of Kairoi Residential, a vertically integrated multifamily investment, development, and property management company headquartered right here in San Antonio with projects all over the United States. Mike lives in a pro-growth mentality simply because he believes that if communities aren't growing, they're either stagnating or they're in decline. He has spent years volunteering for organizations like Greater SATX and other economic development projects, or just by joining forces with like-minded business leaders who like to make things happen. He's been known to have an opinion or two, and that's why we've invited him to spend some time with us today talking about Proposition A and Proposition B. But we first want to learn a little bit more about Mike and about Kairoi Residential. Mike, welcome to the show.
I think we nailed the timing just perfect, Eddie.
So, Mike, you're not a native to San Antonio, but you came here as a youngster. So tell me about that transition.
Yeah, so born in Florida in West Palm Beach, and my dad was working at the time for my uncle, who was very large in real estate business at that time. He was the largest private landlord in the country, in fact. And my dad traveled 300 days one year. And my mom, when he came home from one of his trips, said, "Hey, this isn't what I signed up for." And so something's got to change. And so my dad said, okay. And so he moved our family and started his own business with partners and moved us from West Palm to San Antonio. So he, could have selected many different places. He had some business relationships in San Antonio that could accelerate. He felt like his company, and so that's how I ended up here anyway. So,
and then right now, your company does a variety of things. You develop and construct buildings. You manage properties and residential units and buildings. But you have chosen to stay located here and be headquartered here.
Sure. Yeah. So for 20 some odd years, I carried around a card with my last name on it. And then roughly 8 years ago, decided to take the two investment and development businesses that we'd built over the course of now 20 some odd years, rename them to Kairoi Residential. And we started our own property management business. And, the investment and development companies would have stayed headquartered here. We did think long and hard about where we want to locate a property management company. That was sort of my first introduction into economic development. And so we worked with the team, and, we ended up in downtown San Antonio. It was a great decision. We built a great company, and we're not looking back. We just signed an extension and added more space on to our current existing space, 10 years. So we're going to be in downtown for a long time.
So you have the 300 Main building downtown that's across the street from PNC Bank and the Center Club. That's a building you did not construct that one, but that's one you manage?
Correct. And so we manage 300 Main for Weston Urban. Randy Smith, who's a dear friend, and ultimately, when you look at Kairoi, where is our value proposition as a business, Eddie? We're focused on managing the very best buildings in the country. It doesn't matter if it's here in San Antonio or in Austin or in Charlotte, North Carolina, or Nashville, or Salt Lake City, Denver. We manage really nice properties.
And can I just interrupt you and say that is a really nice property?
Yeah.
I have visited someone who lives there, and I've been there for a cocktail reception somewhere. I don't know what floor it is.
Well, there's multiple places to have a cocktail at 300 Main. It's beautiful. Randy did an amazing job. The building is performing very well.
That I was on has access to the outside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's beautiful, and so he did an amazing job.
Now, the other building that's coming to mind is the 6G building in Austin, which is quite the quite the feat because it's a large building, and that is one that you did construct and you are managing.
Correct. We have a very large development pipeline. 6G and our other project, Waterline, are probably the two crown jewels. Certainly the nicest buildings that we have developed under the Kairoi brand. All of them very unique stories. These are not easy projects to put together. Very complicated projects, vertical mixed use. So 600,000 square feet of office with 348 residential units on top, with 5 floors of penthouses, 3 different pools, the tallest pool in Texas, multiple amenity levels around the building. But yeah, no, that project was executed, I thought, very well. It's always tough in development, Eddie. You have this vision, and it doesn't always turn out, exactly how you want it. And I will tell you, with 6 and Guad residences at 6G, I would tell you
6 in Guadalupe in Austin.
Correct. It turned out, I would say, 99% to the vision. Which is super, super rare.
Now, is this the building that was pre-leased by Meta?
So the office portion is still leased by Meta.
Okay.
They have not moved in. They're paying full rent, but they haven't moved in.
Because shortly after they signed the lease, COVID hit.
That's right. And so it was crazy timing. They signed the lease in December, right before New Year's, and then March hit, and then obviously the world changed with regard to the perception of office and the need for office space, et cetera. And we're seeing that sort of pendulum start to swing back now. More folks are now being required to come back to the office, and people are working in the office more days. JP Morgan, you hear statements from more and more CEOs. Even the tech CEOs are now bringing more and more folks back to the office. And, office is not dead, as most people sort of thought. But obviously it changed Meta's plans with regard to that project, and so they keep it real quiet, so we don't know really what their plans are. They're very tight-lipped, but we'll read and react based on what they decide to do if they ever decide to move in. But they're paying full rent. They have not started build out of any space. They have subleased a little space. So other than that, the residences are 95% leased. It's some really amazing rents. We've got a great tenant base there. The average tenant pays 8% in rent of their income only, which is I've never heard of anything like that ever my whole career.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing. And then you mentioned the other building, Waterline in Austin, and Waterline. Wait, 6G is 60 some odd stories?
66 stories.
And Waterline is 74?
74, the tallest building in Texas now, which wasn't the goal to build a project. We're always trying to build the most economic project that we can build, the one that makes the most economic sense. It had tremendous entitlements, in other words, ability to build, square footage. And we, have actual 3 significant uses in that project. And so we've got, 800 plus thousand square feet of office in that building. We've got 1 hotel, and then we've got 358 residences on top of the office. So it'll be a very interesting project, really catalytic, going to be a big change, located in the Rainy Street district in Austin, fully embraces the creek, Waterloo Greenway project that's simultaneously being delivered now with a series of bridges and renovated trails and updated landscaping that connects, sort of Dell Medical all the way down to the lake. And I think with plans to build a floating bridge to the south side of Lady Bird Lake. So really exciting project. I think, it's certainly a signature project of my career. I don't know. We're a long way from building those types of buildings based on economic circumstances today. But still have a ways to go. You're never done until you're done at these buildings, but
and then
it's exciting.
On top of that, you also have Austin is building a new convention center, They are planning with TxDOT this Connect project for transportation to widen streets and widen I-35 and double deck 35 and a host of other things. So there's a lot of economic activity in Austin right now.
There is, and there has been for a long time. I would tell you, Austin was really the example that I got in terms of visibility and a front row seat for economic development, right? When you look back at where Austin was, in the early 2000s to where it is today, I mean, you can go online, look at the pictures of then to now and see the changes in the skyline over a very modest period of time. 24 years is just astonishing. So I really got the perspective from Austin. They did not have the benefit of the infrastructure that San Antonio has had because of military presence here. So we started from a lead position in terms of our, mobility, but we didn't keep pace necessarily with the economic development efforts in San Antonio.
And did you sort of learn along the side of Gary Farmer? Gary, is Mr. Real Estate in Austin and was involved in Opportunity Austin.
Yeah. People just don't know the story about Austin, Eddie, even today, as much as Austin has gotten a lot more press and, everybody sees the progress that they've made up there. But, Gary is a dear friend who started his conversation with me on economic development some 15 years ago. Back then I was in my 30s. I was like, thought he was flattering me, trying to get my title business. But, he asked me, Mike, why don't you get involved in economic development? And back then I thought this is reserved for, Tom Frost and Red McCombs and all these other folks. Like this isn't my role. Now I will tell you, Gary Farmer is the reason, and there ought to be a statue, and he's a super modest guy who would never, you'll probably frown even if I said this, but as you pull into Austin, there should be a statue of Gary Farmer. I mean, he has single-handedly, in my opinion, driven economic growth to that region and put them in a whole different position economically in terms of opportunity, growth, all of the metrics that you can measure a city by. And it's had its challenges. It's got infrastructure problems and traffic issues and, things that they have to solve. But they certainly have provided opportunity to residents who before very limited, to be honest. I mean, it was really the city was government, the university, and then it had this, he calls the smattering of tech. I call the smattering of tech manufacturing. That economy was attractive to chip manufacturers, microchip manufacturers, who were attracted to their low cost of living and low wage base. Sound familiar, right?
Right.
And then when they realized they could build those chips in Malaysia even cheaper, a lot of them left. And it left, the Austin in crisis, specifically after the .com crash. And so, that's when Gary interjected himself into the process. And started, executing what has become, our goal here in San Antonio with greater SATX.
So two things. Number one, to your point about having a statue, the highest award you can win at the Real Estate Council of Austin is named the Gary Farmer Award.
It should be.
It is. But to a second point, you became a driving force at greater SATX, really sort of pushing the Opportunity Austin model of, private funding of economic development so that you're not – because we've seen in other cities in Texas when economic development is government-owned, then someone who wants to move here can do a Freedom of Information request and find out what incentives Dallas is offering, Houston's offering.
I wouldn't say that is necessarily plays a key role. I think, and I'll rewind. I ended up in economic development because nobody else really raised their hand, to be honest with you, Eddie. And so when I look back on it, I was on the Chamber of Commerce as a vice chairman. I connected folks then to Gary, had Gary come down. We got organized in San Antonio. We received Gary because nobody knew the story about Austin. They think it just materialized.
Right.
They think keep Austin weird and the university and all these things. Well, those were factors, but that wasn't the reason, and it still isn't the reason that they continue to be an attractive place for business. And so I had Gary come down, and Gary does what he does, and he's got great charisma, but he brought his book that was about this thick, and he walked everybody, and all the powers to be are in the room. And I thought, boy, Mike, good job. These guys are they now have the vision. They see the paint by numbers of how you do it, and they're going to engage with Gary, and off this goes, and I can move on to something else. Well, a few months go by. I called Gary. Hey, Gary, I just want to check in with you. How's it going? Has anybody reached out to you? No, Mike. I'm like, okay. Well, listen, Mike, you have unrealistic expectations, which I do, and I move at a very fast pace, which I do. And, I thought, boy, everybody's just going to have, I just need to be more patient, let everybody sort of get their feet under them. Maybe they're doing some internal work and don't know. A couple months later, I called Gary. Gary, has anybody called you? Crickets is what he said. That's all he said. And I was like, okay. When he responded to me at that point, I said, okay, I get it now. I'm going to have to do it, get involved. And literally the day I made that call, I got a call from Randy Smith. Mike, who are we going to get to do this economic development? And I laughed. And I said, well, I have somebody, Randy. And he said, oh, great. Who is it? Who is he? I said, well, I don't know if you really want to know. Oh, no, I do want to know. I said, well, the answer, Randy, is you and me. I said, look, I'll make a deal with you. If you'll commit to me, I'll commit to you, and we're just going to go. And so that's how I first got started in economic development. Didn't know anything about it. Obviously, we've invested in and been in different communities around the country, but that was my entree into economic development. So I took Randy on a field trip. We went up to Austin. I said, have you met Gary Farmer? No, we're going to take a field trip. And we sat down, and Gary gave us more time of his time, very valuable time. Spent about an hour with us, and as Randy said, he had the answers to the test, and he gave them all to us. And we ended that meeting and said, Gary, if you were us, and you were starting from a place that we just don't feel San Antonio's gotten its best in terms of economic development progress, and not only not gotten its best, just haven't gotten a great effort, then what would be your first call? He said, Mike, I would contact Market Street Advisors out of Atlanta, who's written 4 5-year plans for us, and engage with a guy there named Mac Holliday, and see if he'd be interested in helping you guys. And so on the way back, I said, Randy, to hell with a call. We mean business. Let's show them we mean business. So let's fly to Atlanta on our own dime, and we did it. So we flew to Atlanta and interviewed Mac and his team, and he laid out the process and everything else, and we brought back a proposal to write an economic development plan for San Antonio. And in that meeting, he said, look, I'm just going to tell you right now, I'll write a plan, but if you don't commit to 2 things, I'm not doing it. We're like, what? You're not doing it? We're paying you. You won't do it? No, I won't do it. Because it won't be successful if you don't do these 2 things. First of all, it's got to be regional. This can't be San Antonio. It's got to be about the entire region. And nobody in Japan or in Korea or in Germany or even in Canada really care about the lines on the map.
Yeah, they don't look at cities, they look at regions.
They just look at the region, they look at the workforce, they look at the schools, they look at all those sorts of metrics, cost of living, all of those sorts of things to make a decision. But they don't care, about your jurisdictionally
right.
where they are. And so, okay, that was eye-opening. And then when the next thing he said is, number 2, Mike, it's got to be led funding-wise by the private sector. And the reason why is it's hard to write. These are 20 and 30-year plans, right? Our plans are 5 years. So we raise money in 5-year plans at Greater SATX, but your goal is really more like 30 years, right? You have a long-term outlook. And it's really hard to plan 20 and 30 years out when you are have the potential to be gerrymandered and manipulated by politicians that are elected every few years. And so, they have a different agenda necessarily. And some are altruistic and do have honest, intentions and want to think 30 years long. Some don't. The point is, why take that risk? Now, I will tell you, we're very fortunate that the city and the county supported the economic development. It used to be, the artist formerly known as San Antonio Economic Development Foundation.
Right.
And we were very fortunate that, when this thing was started, it was started by General McDermott and a whole bunch of other business leaders. And then the businesses funded it. And then over time, business participation fell with the effectiveness of the organization. And I would say we went a period of 30 years with very weak effort and non-professional, non-organized, a plan that sat up on the shelf with dust that nobody even looked at. We were very reactionary, unfortunately, and it really put us well behind the pack in a very competitive landscape in terms of competing for opportunity. And that it came at the expense of opportunity for our community, really. Better jobs, economic mobility, and not this cycle of poverty that we all are aware of that we're trying to eviscerate and fix. So in any event, it was eye-opening to me to have him stand behind the principles of it needs to be funded by the private sector so that you can have a vision that stays consistent over 20 to 30 years and doesn't get manipulated. But I am thankful that the city, because when we started, it was 70 to 80% funded by the city and the county.
Yes.
And then, we have since flipped that ratio. So now we have, businesses, private companies that are now behind the plan, that have invested in the plan the first 5 years. We're about to fundraise for our second 5-year plan. We've had some extraordinary success there that I'll talk about in a minute. But, it has worked. And, when you think about Market Street Advisors, when we went there, and I'm a busy guy. I didn't do my research, which is rare, but I didn't. And I got there and I found out that Mac had written the economic development plans for Nashville, Charlotte, Austin, Phoenix.
All cities.
The list goes on.
That have seen a lot of success.
Yes, and have been very successful in terms of creating jobs with economic mobility and improving the quality of life for their communities in a huge way. And so, I'm like, okay, well, obviously the guy, he was a 75-year-old retired naval aviator who had forgotten more about economic development than I will ever know in my life, as hard as I try. But the guy, he was very experienced, and what's beautiful about his process is he writes a plan that's specific for San Antonio. It's not Austin's plan. It's not Dallas's plan. It's not Houston's plan. It is unique and framed around the assets, the culture, and all the aspects, the workforce, the skill sets, the university systems, all of those things. In addition, to the demographics and everything else. So it is tailored specifically to maximize, the success of our community.
So, based on your knowledge of economic development and having assets that are attractive for people to come here, and in line with what you do in your profession, in your company, you make major investments in communities when you build a building or you go manage a property. On November the 4th, Bexar County voters have a chance to accept an investment by the Spurs, both not only for $500 million for a new arena, but also $1.5 billion for investment around that arena.
$75 million to the community in terms of community benefits.
Lease payments to the city for the building and guaranteed coverage of any cost overruns.
Sure.
What kind of deal would you say that is for Bexar County voters?
I would say it's a great deal. For those of you that don't know, it's an exceptional deal. When you do the research on what did Mark Cuban put into the American Airlines Center, he put a whopping 0 into that facility. The current Toyota Center in Houston, and these are just nearby facilities that people might know coming from other communities. That owner invested $45 million for that facility. And I think the Spurs are making a tremendous commitment relative to other sports owners. And I know there are some that can pay for it all. Steve Ballmer has the money to pay for it all. Some don't have as much of the capacity to be able to do that. It's so important, Eddie, and we have a great deal. Let me tell you something else really quickly. Who was the first person, who participated in the design of the first economic development plan? Peter John Holt was front and center for all those meetings. You know who wrote one of the first checks to our effort? Peter John Holt. And you know who complained when the first major win that we landed was JCB, who's a direct competitor to Holt? Not a phone call. Not a, hey, guys, man, can it be someone else? Right? I mean, that's the kind of person that you have here and who has always invested and believed in the community. And he's about as good and responsible of an owner as I think you're going to find and I think they've demonstrated that over a long period of time. These are not, people that threaten the city every other day trying to get more, right? They don't operate like that. These are people who care about the community, who are rooted in the community, and play a big part of it. Stripping the sports piece out of it, Eddie, stripping that aspect out of it. This is a catalytic investment and the opportunity to make a huge catalytic investment in our downtown and the perception of downtown San Antonio and change the trajectory, the current trajectory of downtown San Antonio. We've officed downtown before COVID, through COVID, continue to office downtown. I will tell you, it's tough right now. Our downtown did not rebound after COVID. And businesses have a choice about where they're going to locate. And they don't have to be downtown. They can choose the suburbs. They can choose somewhere else. And I think we have to continue to invest in our downtown, and we've got to do something to change what is a downward trajectory there. And you have to be honest and realistic with yourself as to what's going on. And I think this gives us an opportunity to do that. It's a massive investment. It can create energy. It can create. There's other things that are happening downtown, and I think when combined with the Alamo, with the potential for the minor league ballpark downtown, the projects that Randy Smith has also planned, where they've assembled additional land parcels. There's a lot of potential momentum, but we got to make it a reality. These projects need to succeed so that they feed more, and create more and more opportunity. And without something that is catalytic in this event, I fear that there's, more downside to the downtown. I'll take it a step further. Going through this revamp of our first 5-year plan, the architect of our economic development plan, which, by the way, has created 111 wins during our first 5-year plan, that has created $6 billion in wages and $29.1 billion of economic impact. Okay, we led the state in wage and job growth. Has that ever happened in the history of San Antonio? No.
I don't think so.
And the list goes on. I can list 20 things that have never, ever happened. JCB, $30 billion economic impact over 15 years on one project. When has that ever happened? Never. So there's a whole long list of nevers that have occurred by us executing this plan. And so our consultant said the number one project that you can work on and that could have a catalytic impact on your community is Project Marble. Okay? Not a sports guy, not a basketball guy, just from an economic development perspective, said this is the number one project that can have the biggest impact on our region. Now, given the success of our plan, do we really want to tell them no, that you're wrong? And I think more importantly, I haven't heard, have you heard, other than the emotional argument, what is the argument to not vote for the propositions? Have you heard a business case, a reason? What is it? Because I haven't heard it.
No, the number one comment that I hear is We should be using that money for drainage projects so people don't die when it floods anymore. The problem is the money mechanisms,
can't be used.
The project finance zone and the hotel motel tax money cannot be used for things like that.
No.
And so if we don't use the project finance zone money, which is a state tax that the state has told us you can keep if you use it for an arena or renovation of your convention center. But if you're not going to use it for those things, you need to send that back to the state.
Yeah. So this is not money out of taxpayers' pockets. And I think that has become more clear. I think, some have gotten educated that maybe at the early onset weren't as educated. I believe that it's more of the emotional argument of supporting a wealthy sports owner, and why don't they just build their own facility? I think that is it. I will tell you, in listening to our consultant, this project helps the people that have driven the highest level of opposition more than it helps anybody else. I mean, that's the real unbelievable aspect to it. Is that I think that people don't understand the positive impact that it's going to have on their potential for their families and their earnings potential and their job opportunities, moving forward. And, it's not just this project also. Companies around the world pay attention to the rhetoric. They pay attention to the politics. They pay attention to whether you're pro-growth, pro-progress, pro-business, or whether you're against business.
And if they don't like what they hear, they'll either step on the brakes or they'll slam on the brakes.
That's right. Or they'll move. Worse,
they'll
people that are here,
else.
They can choose somewhere else. And just like the Spurs have, if you don't think that the calls are coming in every day to Peter John from Seattle and Nashville,
Oakland,
and Oakland and other places around the country, Austin too, they would build them an arena for free in 0 seconds flat. And look what the Browns had to do to get the Browns back after they left. They had to guarantee a sellout. The city had to guarantee it for years. I mean, you look at the economics of what the deal that was on the table that they passed and then what they did later to get them back. I mean, they could have had another team probably. Unfortunately, the sports landscape, very competitive, and there's a lot of communities that would love to have one of the most well-run franchises in all of sports, in their backyard, for sure.
And we're a city that has never been able to secure an NFL team. Mm-hmm. We're a city that has attempted to secure the Florida Marlins or a Major League Baseball team, and we have not been successful in doing that. And but we do have an NBA team, and so we also lost a Major League Soccer franchise to Austin. Mm-hmm. So why wouldn't we be proud of what we have and hope to hold on to what we have?
Yeah, you're asking questions, Eddie, that I don't have the answers to. They're a great community partner. I think they. You don't see them getting in trouble. You don't see problems like you do everywhere else. It's really a well-run organization. The people are amazing, in the organization, not just the players and their participation in the community. Why would we not want that, as part of our community? I can't fathom San Antonio without the Spurs. It's really, but it is coming down to that. If they don't get this arena, it has not been said, they have not threatened anything. That's not their style. But to think that we're going to keep them around where they're at is not going to happen.
And it's driven by the economics of professional sports and how that has changed over the years.
Yeah.
They don't make the bulk of their money on tickets. It's a combination of
TV rights and
many other percentage of every hot dog that's sold and Coke that's poured, and so the voters have an opportunity to keep that investment here, and I certainly hope that they take it. We've seen the AT&T headquarters leave San Antonio for Plano. We've seen Sunoco come and acquire Newstar. And, one of the things that I have seen when that happens is the loss of philanthropic dollars, money that could go to the symphony or money
Sure.
that could go to the ballet, or you don't see that when those headquarters leave town.
Yeah. And the jobs leave with them. I mean, it's job demand is what creates the ability to drive higher wages. And, I've heard people, affordable housing. You can't race your way to the bottom of affordable housing. San Antonio has some of the most affordable housing in the country. We have an income problem, not a housing cost problem. Steel costs what it costs, lumber costs what it costs. You're not going to reduce those costs, okay? You cannot add affordable housing at a pace that allows you to build enough of it for what is needed. You have to raise the wages of people, and the only way to do that is to provide jobs that provide economic mobility, so that folks that have been generations a landscaper, my dad's a landscaper, I'm a landscaper, great-granddad, break through from that, and it doesn't mean everybody goes to college. It means there are skills sets that can be developed in a very short period of time that lead to very high-paying jobs in a lot of the businesses that are located here.
You bring up a very good point, because the city of Brownsville, Texas is coming to mind, which is the hometown of my late mother, and still have a lot of family there. Their personal income, I believe, went up by the largest amount it's ever gone up in a single year, and I believe it also led the state. Mm-hmm. Why? SpaceX. SpaceX came to town, and the local government officials said, we demand that you hire X percent of your employees from here. And they not only hired that, but they doubled and in some cases tripled it because they had access to a solid workforce and skill sets. And so I think that's a good example of what can happen. To your point, it's not an affordable housing issue, it's an income issue.
Yeah. Yeah, and I cannot emphasize that enough. And I do think when you talk to the different politicians, they all want jobs here. They want companies to be here. They're first in line to say, what do you need? But they don't understand that the other things that you do have consequences to the decisions with a lot of these businesses. We've watched it happen. When the tent city was happening in Austin, things slowed down, okay? When they started to go against business, things slowed down. When they fixed it, things picked back up. I mean, that's how it works. And so these decisions that we want to make only about the Spurs or only about that aren't about just that, right? There are eyes that are watching you in the national spotlight, in the global spotlight with these businesses all around the world. The last thing they want to do, Eddie, is relocate to a place that ends up looking just like the place they left for good reason, right? I mean, it's the truth.
It is.
And so we just have to be very careful with that image, and we need to be open for business, right? I mean, we don't need to raise the bar on businesses here, okay? We're not we've got to create an attraction, and that business inflow is the lifeblood that it's the key to a better life.
I've seen some elected leaders over time be anti-business, but they are demanding that new jobs come to the city. And I think sometimes they forget, well, that business that you hate is both a job creator and a paycheck provider for a family.
Yeah.
So you can't have economic success if you're turning business away.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when you're a place like San Antonio that for 30 years was not well known for attracting business. We had to change that tide. We're changing it at Greater SATX. I will tell you, the improvement, the things that have been accomplished in the first 5 years are astronomical. You would have told me that we could achieve these things at the beginning, I would have said we're being too ambitious. and I'm a dreamer.
Yeah.
Okay, a guy's building the tallest building in Texas, who built $60,000 houses when he started. I mean, come on. So I will tell you, you got to dream big, but the success of that endeavor has been beyond anything that I could have anticipated in a short period of time, and we just got to capitalize on it. There's so much momentum here. When you look at the Alamo and the money that's being invested
hundreds of
there,
millions of dollars.
what's going on at the airport, right? What's going on at all these places around, the ballpark downtown, which would be a great amenity to downtown. There's tremendous momentum, and when you consider there's the reshoring of manufacturing and the amount of manufacturers that are being relocated, either from different parts of the country, but a lot of them, these are new facilities to the United States. JCB, this is their largest North American manufacturing facility, period. It's a company in the United Kingdom.
Right.
And so, we have a great opportunity right now. We're at the right place at the right time, but we need to embrace that momentum and not stifle it. And I think, some of the commentary, some of the rhetoric that's coming out is really potentially threatens that growth, Eddie. And it scares me. It scares me for the people who need the opportunity, because we're so close to having it, but it is very fragile,
And this election on November 4th is not just about the Spurs. It's also about the Rodeo. Proposition A will renovate if passed, it'll renovate the Freeman Coliseum, the Frost Bank Center, and the Rodeo grounds. Their goal, the Rodeo's goal, San Antonio Livestock Exposition, is to have year-round offerings. Not always rodeo, but concerts, professional bull riding, and other things. Right now, they're limited to 20 days inside the Frost Bank Center.
Yeah.
They look at Calgary, they look at Fort Worth as great examples of success that you can have when you have access to a facility. So if the Spurs move downtown and the Rodeo gets a lot more access to the Frost Bank Center, then they're on the path to having year-round events.
Yeah, I do think that there needs to be a new vision for that area. And, there was a perception when the AT&T Center was built that this was going to be an economic bonanza for the East Side. And you just aren't going to be able to do that with 41 games a year plus playoffs. It's not enough. And so there needs to be a dream for that real estate. It's great real estate. I have some ideas of my own. There are others that have ideas. But I do think it needs to be a 24-hour, it needs to be more of a destination. It has to have magnetic pull, which it doesn't have right now. This is, people go there, they spend money for, Rodeo comes, it goes. The Spurs games are at night for the most part. There's not a lot to do around in the direct vicinity of that area. The Stockyards comes to mind as a great example for what can be. I mean, we're in the center of South Texas here. I mean, if we can't, turn that into a major tourist destination, I don't know what to tell you. So there are some opportunities. It's going to take, a lot of investment to turn it into something that can be an economic engine and can be what the East Side really needs. So I think it's kind of weird to say, but maybe losing the Spurs might actually help the East Side more than the Spurs did, and I think that's the truth in this case because of the money that's going to go in, and it also spurs the thought process around change. Right? Let's be different. What are we going to do with this? We've got a great opportunity. What are we going to do? And
you mean losing the Spurs to downtown, having them leave?
The Spurs relocate
right.
from the East Side to downtown, but they already have proven not to be this economic catalyst over there. So why not, have this be the opportunity to re-envision and reimagine what can be down there, right?
And, my wife and I are chairing the capital campaign for the restoration of the Alameda Theater, which is in the middle of all that development that you're talking about that's going to happen in the downtown sector, separate from Marvel, but you've got the Alamo restoration as well, and there's a lot of excitement. And the bookends of baseball on one side of downtown and the Spurs Arena on the other.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen economic data that shows the economic impact that the Spurs have on San Antonio. But I'm not sure we could calculate what the economic impact would be to this city if the Spurs were to leave.
Eddie, I cannot imagine it. I cannot imagine it. It's beyond anything that I can ever imagine. I just think that sports serves such a greater purpose in galvanizing a community. I have a great story for you there. I always have stories. When the Spurs won their first championship, and they were playing what I felt like was going to be the last San Antonio game because I felt like they had New York on the ropes.
That was 1999.
1999. No season tickets for Mike. Just bought tickets, took my friends, and I still hadn't. I was not far from being any success at that point in time. And so I thought, boy, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna have all my friends chip in. We're gonna get a limo. We're gonna go down to the game. We're gonna have a great time. We're gonna sell it. We're gonna win this game, and then hopefully win it in New York, which turned out to be the truth. But I went there and dropped off fine. We won the game. Everything was going great, and the limo, had broken down. I probably didn't rent the best one because I didn't have the money to do it. And so we are going to walk from the Alamo Dome all the way to downtown. Surely we're not going to just, call a cab and go home.
Right.
We just won, and we're on our way to our first NBA championship. We're walking. It might have been 6 of us, 4, 5, 6, something like that. We're walking, and up comes an anonymous van, stops and says, "Hey, do you guys need a ride?" The van was probably 20 years old at the time, conversion van. We're like, "Yeah, we need a ride. Where are you going?" "Downtown." By the way, the streets are packed. We get in. Guy says, "Hey, you guys want a beer?" "Yeah, great." He gives us a beer, takes us in, drops us off to downtown. We're high-fiving with the guys, celebrating, talking about the Spurs. Where else does that happen? I never saw the guy again, didn't give his number. He had no reason to pick us up, seeing some guys walking, trying to look like they belonged. And, but that's what sports does. It really does galvanize people in ways that you can't even measure. Really.
I mean, when you see how the community comes together with a championship or even just a playoff win going to the next level, it is a sight to behold. Well, what would your advice be? I'm going to let you give you the last word here. What would your advice be to Bexar County voters as to what's at stake?
Yeah, I think tremendous risk at limited progress is at stake. I don't even know that I can quantify the risk of not voting for this facility, and the encouraged opposition hasn't put forth really a good case, in my opinion, as to why. Certainly haven't, given us an economic case. Every great city in America has an amazing downtown. And I think we have to, as a community, continue to make investments in downtown. And in this case, we get to invest the state's dollars into downtown. Why would we not take that opportunity to do so? To me, it just seems absurd.
And tourist dollars as well.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, this is primarily funded by tourists, unless I go down and stay in a hotel one night a year in downtown San Antonio. But these are primarily tourist dollars that are going to fund the taxes that we're going to utilize that otherwise would go to the state to reimagine our downtown. Think about that for a minute. That's like, you going taking money from somebody you don't know, using it to improve your community, and then they leave town and we get the benefit of it, right? It seems crazy to me. So I hope that people will, look at it from that economic perspective and not just make it about the Spurs, because it might be the single most important vote that people have had the opportunity to make since I've been in San Antonio 50 years. That's what I think, the gravity of this responsibility for our citizens. And so I hope that people can see through some of the emotion and really look at the benefits and the upside, and what that looks like and what it looks like without.
I think I agree with you 100%. I think it's critical, for a gentleman who's in the line of work of making investments in communities. You've seen the successful communities. You mentioned a few of them a little while ago: Phoenix, Charlotte, and others that have made their own investments. Austin, and are feeling the benefit of that. And we now have that opportunity. And I certainly hope we take it, not just for the Spurs, but for the rodeo and for our urban core, and for the rodeo grounds and all the things that will come. And there's also other parts to this, that the renovation of the Alamo Dome, the expansion of the convention center, a new convention center hotel, 5,000-seat arena. That's not on those things aren't on the ballot, but those things won't happen.
That's right.
If voters vote down.
That's right.
Prop B.
That's right.
Mike Lynd, CEO of Kairoi Residential, thanks again. It was great to have you here, and I appreciate not just your vision on this particular proposal, but your engagement in the community, your involvement in economic development, and all the things you do to make this town a better place to live in.
Thanks, Eddie, and same to you. Really appreciate your podcast, and the messages that you've been spreading have been, things that people need to hear. And so I appreciate that you take a balanced approach. You give both sides a chance to speak. I think it's really important, especially in today's society. So I want to thank you for doing that. And you've done a great job, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir.